I'm going to remind you about the competition and give you a sneak preview of Volume 2. So, the competition then. About time I gave it a closing date. The closing date is going to be when one of two things arrives first. That will either be June the 18th, which is the day before my birthday, so then I'll make the prize draw on my birthday, or 50 entries. 50 entries might be very, very ambitious, but it does mean that if you get your entries in soon, then it draws sooner. Okay? So, either 50 entries or June the 18th, that's the deadline. So, all you've got to do is tag someone, retweet to someone, share with someone who you think will enjoy Stella Zombie Killer Volume 1. And they will be entered into a prize draw to win this very copy. The copy that I've just spent the last few weeks reading out to you guys. I've already begun the signing of it. There you go. Whoever wins, they will get their name at the top there. Okay? And for doing the tagging, you get put into the prize draw for a copy of Stella the Zombie Killer Volume 2, which again will be a signed copy, and you will be a fabulous, fabulous person for sharing it. Okay? Right, so there we go. Either 50 entries or June the 18th, whichever of those two comes first. Here's that little sneak preview of Stella the Zombie Killer Volume 2 that I promised you. Now, I carry on with the numbering of the titles. Therefore, it is part 23. Quickly show you one of Alison Rasmussen's fabulous portraits again. Just a reminder there of the portraits that she's done. Poor old Hook, he's gone now. Now then. As we finished, however, of course, we'd met Ben. Ben's a bad guy. But Ben is working for a guy called Kyle. And Kyle doesn't sound very nice at all. So here we go then. Stella the Zombie Killer, part 23. Craig's missing. He's not been seen since he went to Ben. The woman was tall, taller than most men, middle-aged, powerful, hair cropped close. An ugly scar ran down her bare left arm from shoulder to wrist. She walked with another man in a cramped space, a landing of sorts, a small flat wooden floor between the flights of steps that surrounded them, a narrow square of darkness just a banister's width away stretched above and below them through the wooden stairs. Absently, the woman let her fingers stretch out from her palm, trailing her nails along the banister, touching the air, feeling the currents of the drafts, remembering freedom. She carried on. He's out of control, Kyle. You know that. He's useful, Claire. You know that. Kyle was a tall man, taller than Claire, his face and body angular, cruel. He had a habit of tilting his head back just slightly, so that he could look down on whomever he was talking to. He looked down at her now, his glare running the length of his beaked nose and straight into her eyes. She didn't flinch, just pushed the tablet device she held between them towards him. They paused at the bottom of another flight of wooden steps. The screen showed the devastation at the Victoria and Albert Museum. They watched as the Angel's laser slashed the Sowers down, row after row of them. And now he set that off. Tash was always going to come home when it got too much, when she didn't have anyone to look after her. But now we've got that to deal with, said Claire. Things always need dealing with. How long ago was this? A couple of hours. Is Ben still there? Of course he is. You haven't told him to do anything else yet. He's your little robot. He'll do as you say till you tell him to stop doing it. Jealous? Kyle smiled as he said it. Of that freak? Hardly. We're all jealous, Claire. He reached out a hand to smooth her cheek. Just a hint of a gasp escaped her mouth. We all want to be number one. Kyle relaxed his fingers, letting them drop from Claire's face, but leaving one, his index finger, pressed into her cheek. He began to drag his fingertip down to her jawline, leaving a V of slightly reddened flesh in its wake. We all see ourselves at the centre of our own universe. He continued. Ben just wants a little attention, that's all. Anyone could have given it to him at any time. He moved his finger along her jawline till it was pressed firmly against her chin. Someone to point him out and say, well done. That was it. Kyle shrugged and gave Claire's chin a little shove. She stood firm, only allowing her head to move. Kyle smiled at her. I just happened to give it to him first. Does that make you his master or his mother? Kyle smiled. In a way, I suppose I'm both. Whichever it is, he wants to impress, and that's something I can use. Then use him. You know what he's like when he's left alone too long. He finds ways to amuse himself. Claire suppressed a small shudder. You shouldn't let him scare you. You know I'll never let him hurt you. Ben knows the line. If he crosses it, I'll deal with him. Claire looked up at Kyle and nodded. She held her breath while she did it, keeping her neck rigid and the nod firm. It looks to me, said Kyle, turning his attention back to the tablet screen, like they need a joiner. Claire smiled, releasing the breath she had held. Know any good ones? She said. He smiled at her. There's a name I could recommend. He started up the stairs, taking them two at a time, and Claire quickly followed. Forget about Ben. I'll deal with him later. Right now I want to know if we're on schedule. Jermaine thinks it will work. I know that it'll work. I want to know where we are on the schedule. We need more people, said Claire, her words calmer than she felt. No matter how many times she made this climb, Claire could never get used to the alarming creaks and the shifting of the dust. Kyle seemed oblivious. He pounded through the noises of the dust, and his determined steps shaking the stairs even more than usual. We have enough rifles for 40, which we think would be enough to deal with the Sours, but we've only got 30 people we can rely on to shoot. Scratch that, 29. Craig was the shooter. Kyle glanced at Claire. A smile played across his lips that was amused but carried a warning. We'll continue with recruitment. Winter is coming. People will want warmth and protection. Anyone who's still alive this far into the end of the world will probably be useful with firearms. Recruitment has pretty much stopped. It'll start again. Our street cleaning program will help. He watched her. Have a little faith, Claire. Things are going well, and 40 rifles is good. Our little engineer has been busy. How is he? Same as always. Angry. Wouldn't you be with a face like that? I assume to him it's normal. For all we know, he's a looker where he comes from. He scares you. It wasn't a question. Not while he's in his hole. Kyle smiled once more. It was an indulgent gesture, but Claire knew that it carried the same warning as when she had mentioned Ben. Kyle liked his pets. We're working on finding more warm bodies to fire the rifles, she said. But recruitment isn't easy. People don't seem to trust as easily as they used to. Straight after the crash, everyone was desperate for any kind of help. Now, any warm bodies left have found their own ways of surviving. They don't automatically think that they need us. Remember the ones in South London at the power station? Yeah, the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Good times, Claire. Good times. For some. But that's becoming the norm out there. People not just resisting our help, but actually fighting us. That's where Ben's little slip of control is going to come in useful. A message of support from the Synosia will make sure anyone we find will join us. Suddenly he stopped and turned on Claire, pointing at her, his face a mask of mock seriousness. His voice, sports commentator momentous. Remember, the Synosia fights for you. Claire halted, shocked. Kyle continued, and Ben fights for me. I can offer her and her friends the protection, and all she has to do is record a message. She's not stupid, she'll agree. Kyle turned and climbed the stairs again. How do you know she'll trust you? Claire held her breathing in check, not wanting to show weakness in front of Kyle. She could feel the burn in her legs, the urge to pant and gasp in her lungs, and she knew that there was a sheen of sweat across her forehead. He looked over his shoulder with mock indignation. Joiners are very trustworthy people, Claire. She smiled as she climbed the steps. Without them, we wouldn't have lovely new kitchens, she intoned, obviously quoting Kyle's own words back to him. Exactly, said Kyle, giving her what was this time a genuine smile. Claire allowed her own smile to remain, knowing that she was safe from Kyle's capricious moods for now. There's something about wood that makes people happy. Their footsteps rang solidly on the wooden steps to echo his point. He turned to Claire as he climbed. Unlike our friend Ben, I have to admit that you're right about him. He's dangerous. But, in the grand scheme of things, he's so small that I just can't get too upset with him. Little Ben is not our main concern. They emerged onto a wider space, seemingly vast after the confines of the stairs. Daylight flooded through tall, thin, open windows, and in the middle of the room, dominating, hung a bell. It was even taller than Kyle, and as wide as a car. Claire was almost sagging with relief at the end of their climb, but still overawed by the immensity of the metal bell. Kyle turned to her. It's Big Ben, the that I'm worried about. So, that's a little taster of part 23. Don't forget the competition. Tag someone in the video, they're in the chance of winning Volume 1. You're in with a chance of winning Volume 2. See you soon.